Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan discussing a very surprising protected class. I've had many friends who have done long stints in prison, and they've always told me the same thing about prison justice and those who receive it. And we all know who those people are, the people who do unspeakable acts to young people. We've all known that to be the case, you know, through real experience, either knowing people, hearing stories, or through movies. But it turns out it's not quite like that, according to this governor who was in jail. And the reason that this clip triggered something for me is because of a crazy case, a heinous, disgusting case that just came to a head where two men were sentenced to 100 years. We're going to get into that. First, I'm going to have this Joe Rogan clip. Then I'm going to show you a little bit about the case. Then we're going to hear Patrick Bet-David and his team of people talking about the whole thing and what should happen. But a lot of us thought these guys got what they deserved, and we might be wrong about that. Let's listen to this.
Was an unlawful standard. But the damage was done. That company went bankrupt. All those people lost their jobs. And this Andrew Weissman gets promoted and becomes this legal expert and scholar on CNN. That guy, Fitzgerald, Comey, and people who do this, Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, they ought to go right to jail.
What were they accusing this company of?
Obstruction of justice, that they were destroying records and stuff. And that would have been a crime had they done it after they'd been subpoenaed. But they weren't subpoenaed. They had a right to do whatever they wanted with their records before anybody compelled them to produce them. It was obstruction of justice.
And what was the accusation? Like, what were they trying to get them on?
Saying that they were destroying documents and evidence.
About what, though?
About the accounting work for Enron, which was a real scandal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw The Smartest Men in the Room.
Yep.
That documentary, like, jeez. Anybody who doesn't believe in conspiracies, watch that.
Jeff Skilling was in the prison with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he got a big sentence, and then eventually they found prosecutorial wrongdoing, and he was able to reduce it down from something like 26 years to 14. But he was there with me, along with Smelly and Socks and Mr. B and V and G and all kinds of guys.
I bet you met a lot of characters.
All kinds. I'm writing a book about it. You know, it's a story that starts with one president, ends with another, and there's a governor in prison with gangster disciples, Sinaloa cartel drug dealers, pedophiles. That's what I meant to tell you. I was in there with something like 400 pedophiles.
Jesus.
Murderers, bank robbers.
What do they do with the pedophiles in jail?
They're a protected class in prison because everybody would fuck them up because of the nature of a lot of their crimes. Some of them are worse than others. Some are like this guy that got pardoned by Biden, which is unbelievable, where they're into child pornography. But some were far worse than that. They harmed children
So
directly.
how do they protect these people?
You get more than canceled if you even say something bad to them. You can't offend them. You can't call them a name.
What?
That's their way of policing the other inmates who hate them and resent them.
Really? Mm. So they're protected.
Yes.
Because the thing that people always loved about pedophiles going to jail is like, oh, there's going to be some jail justice.
Well, there is, notwithstanding their policy, the BOP's policy. The guy that was Jared, the guy, Subway guy, he ended up going to the same prison I was in after I worked my way out of that higher security prison, the one behind the barbed wire fence, and got to a camp. Jared got to my prison because it's a prison that has a lot of pedophiles. But out of the 950 guys, roughly, that I was in prison with there were about 300 to 400 pedophiles. And then there were drug dealers, bank robbers, some guys who committed murder. There were 2% white collar, Skilling one of them, one governor, me, right? But those pedophiles, the sex offenders, you can't call them pedophiles. And the derogatory term...
You're not allowed to call them pedophiles?
You can't call them chomos. That's the inside prison name for these guys. It's a
chomo?
Chomo. So I'm there day 2 in prison. I got 14 years ahead of me. They gave me a 14-year sentence. I mean, Trump pulled me out of there after 8. And I'm in there second day. As you can imagine, I write about this in the book. I mean, it's a hard experience, a long, hard journey. It's heartbreaking in so many ways for me and my family. And it's hard. But, I'm learning the ropes. I got all my fellow inmates there. And I'm hearing this phrase, this term. It's called, chomos. Chomo, that guy, he's a chomo. They'd say that. And I'd say, what's that? And they told me. And so I was with one of my, the case manager or somebody. They were giving me more of the information I needed for the stuff I had to learn as a new inmate. And I mentioned, so who are these chumos? And she goes, you can't say that. It's not chumo. And she whispered it, it's chomo. But you can't say that. That's strictly forbidden here. If you say that, you'll go to the SHU. Now, so what's that? I have to ask her. Well, the SHU was Special Housing Unit, SHU. The vernacular was SHU, solitary confinement. And the way they police the inmates and punish them to varying degrees is you get thrown in solitary confinement. So if you just say chomo, that'll land you in solitary confinement.
For how long?
Maybe a week.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah.
That's so crazy that they protect pets.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm too liberal or something, but they have to. Because if left to their own devices, these guys would get so fucked up by the general population who are outraged by their crimes and are also outraged by the fact that a lot of them got special treatment in their sentencing. So you see this guy that Biden just pardoned or gave clemency to. Let's hope it was just clemency and not a pardon, my God. But these sex offenders are getting lighter sentences than the drug dealers or the bank robbers. And if you look at a system of punishment that's supposed to be just and fair and hopefully always tempered with mercy, you'd like to think that there's equal application of the law and that there's some sort of fairness, and that when you measure the victims of the certain crimes, that should be a part of the sentencing. So drug dealers would argue a lot of it not violent. They're right. Their stuff was nonviolent. These guys really harmed children. The ones that touched children, not the ones who just looked at the...
How did they justify you being in this high security prison? Like, why would they put you in with pedophiles and murderers and gangbangers? Why would they do that? Obviously to squeeze you, but how do they pass that through?
You get anybody who gets a sentence of over 10 years has to do time, and you can't be in a camp. So, certain people can't be in camps. For example, any kind of violent offender cannot be in a camp. Cannot be in a camp. That's good. And camps don't have, fences. There's not iron gates that lock you in. I mean, I went from a 50,000 square foot governor's mansion to a 6 foot by 8 foot prison cell. I mean, it's real prison like in the movies. Those iron gates shut you in, and you're restricted in your movements. And you're with some bad guys, I mean, they're interesting guys. I met a lot of guys I really liked. But they did it because they purposely gave me a sentence above 10 years to force me to go into a whole prison and to try to not just squeeze me, but to punish me. And the punishment was because I had the temerity to fight back. Who was this guy? He was only twice elected governor of the fifth largest state to challenge us. And I fought back. And, frankly, the beauty of it is that had I not fought back the way I did, Trump would have never known me. He saw me on television fighting back. I mean, I fought back in ways that predated him, the way he does. And it wasn't by design. It was just I felt like, Jesus, I didn't do anything wrong. And they know it. This is politics. And, this is wrong, bad for our country. I can't give into this. And by the way, if I'm right, they are criminals. I have to fight back. And so I was on all these TV shows, everything. And Trump saw me on the David Letterman show, I think. And by the way, when they do this to you and they arrest you like they did, they arrested me at 6 o'clock in the morning in my house. And it was a super sensational press conference. It was international news. Back then in December of 2008, there were two assholes, and the two biggest assholes in the world were me and Bernie Madoff, because they arrested him like a day or two after me. You remember this?
Wow.
And it was, I had to fight back, and so I was. But you can't make a living. They threw me out of office, and you learn who your friends are in politics, and not a single one of them. They all ran for the hills to protect themselves.
Man, very, very interesting, his perspective. The way he's gained his perspective is just wild. Having to be in jail, seeing how it works, being a governor, and just kind of being like, oh yeah, people go to jail, whatever. And then all of a sudden getting all that taken away, being in jail, seeing how things work there. Just wild stuff. But first off, I just have to say real quick, terrible that they're a protected class and everything. We're going to get to that. But why did he say 50,000 square foot governor's mansion? Why do they get that? I don't understand that at all. Not at all. I don't get that. And the fact that he fought back like Trump did, like you said, predating Trump, it's funny to see some of the comments from videos where I covered this episode and people being like, oh, he broke this law and this law and this law. Yeah, that guy's guilty. It's like, That's exactly what they would have done to Trump. People would have been saying the exact, some people do still, even though he's not guilty of anything, people would have said that exact same thing about Trump. They would have been like, oh, what do you mean? Like, oh, the real estate thing was a scam. He did this, he did that, he did that. Oh, you didn't know? Oh my gosh. They would have said that exact same thing. So that's why a lot of people, you know, they're going towards him being guilty. But I'm like, did you just fall for the thing that they were doing to Trump and you couldn't tell because it wasn't Trump and it was just some governor? And you were just like, he's guilty. They're all guilty politicians. I don't know. I think they pulled the wool over on a lot of people's eyes on this guy, quite honestly. But getting to what this episode's about, I'm gonna say PDF file. That's what people say nowadays to describe these type of guys. Let's get into it, man. I'm not gonna get choked up over this. I'm more pissed than anything, really. But wealthy gay couple that adopted their boys. They do who did, you know what, get 100 years in prison. Zachary and William Zolak will spend the rest of their lives behind bars after pleading guilty to multiple charges. Man, these charges are everything from doing what terrible guys would do to their own children, to selling, to filming, just everything you can think of. These guys are just absolute scum. And I know YouTube, you don't like derogatory things, but what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do in a video like this? You know what I mean? I can't call them gentlemen. I can't just call them guys. They're terrible. They're terrible, terrible, horrible people. Horrible people to adopt children and to do that. Disgusting, disgusting people. Absolutely terrible. Oh, man. Just gross. Just absolutely gross. Patrick Bet-David and his team chime in on this whole thing. And I just want you to listen to what Patrick is talking about, and Adam. And I know we don't like to hear from Adam on the channel, but he does have something pretty good to say in this episode. I know it's very rare, but he does. And Patrick Bet-David as well. Just listen to this, and then we'll talk about the fact that what they're saying in these two clips that I'm going to show you may not actually happen to these guys.
So here's my question for you, Rob. If you can run a poll, okay, what should happen to these guys? 100 years or death? Because just yesterday, I watched a mother with two daughters talking about one of those 37 people that had that Biden changed to life sentences, okay? And some of them children who were on death row, and he flipped it. And the parents and the daughter are like, we never got a call from the president on how we felt about this. You just flipped it on us. And we were feeling like we're going to get our, obviously nothing comes close because that person's not in your life right now. They're no longer with you. Imagine these two boys being adopted, 10 and 12 years old. What should happen to these two guys? There's a lot of questions here, by the way. There's some will even speculate to say, can a gay couple be able to adopt kids? Some people go as far as that. If you just go 80 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, when they did a survey by Gallup on what percentage were comfortable with this, it is a very, very small percentage compared to what it is today. But to me, what should happen to these guys? Worst case scenario, what kind of example should happen to these two men? Do you know what happens if you put them in jail and others find out what they did to these two boys? Do you know what they're going to do to these two men? Do you know what they're going to do to them? But the reality of it is that 100-year life sentence enough for the next gay couple to not want to be tempted to do something like this to boys that they adopt? What is the right decision to be made here, Tom? What do you think?
I think there are cases where you look at it and you wonder if the reform is even possible.
Oh, I muted myself. I just want to fast forward this. I just wanted the question to be put out there. So Patrick Bet-David talks about what should happen, right? Tom here says that could they even be reformed at this point? I'll give you the cliff notes of what Tom had to say. He was trying to give both sides. He's a very informational type of guy when it comes to this podcast. But at the end of the day, he said, I don't think there's reform, and I think it should go to capital punishment. But what Patrick Bet-David said, you know what happens to these guys. Well, just remember what the guy in Joe Rogan's episode just said. Rod, call him Blago because I can't say his name. What did Rod say? Rod said these guys are actually protected, and that it's ticking a lot of people off in there because they're getting lighter sentences now. 100 years isn't light, I'll admit, but should that even be the case? A lot of people are, not happy, even about 100 years. So I'm going to throw it over to Adam now. I like to give a little warning. Some people don't like to hear what Adam has to say, period. But in this case, he actually has something of substance to say.
Well, we all saw the movie The Sound of Freedom, right? And we met one of the producers and the director. And the biggest issue I had with the movie was there was no issue. It was completely understandable, and it was completely something that needed to be addressed. However, the issue I do have is how the media portrayed this movie as some sort of QAnon conspiracy, as if, oh my God, these types of things don't happen. PBD, you said on the podcast a few weeks ago, I think just 2023 alone, there was, 375,000 reports of missing children.
Yep.
Something insane, right? This is, how many people fit into a football stadium? 60,000, 80,000, 100,000? These are 5 to 10 football stadiums worth of missing children. Are you freaking kidding me? And then we see this picture of this couple in their pride flag, family home agenda, whatever that was, as if, everything's totally normal. So, I think you asked the question, what should happen to these people? Without a doubt, done. You're losing your Johnson. Sorry, guys. You're never going to be able to do this again. And by the way, Tom touched on this. In the prison system and in correctional facilities, there's an unwritten code. And PBD, you've interviewed mafia, criminals, drug dealers, the whole lot. At the top of the list, at the criminal pyramid in terms of payback from fellow inmates, it's crimes against children and sex offenders, no doubt. Beyond that, snitches, informants, former law enforcement below that, the weak and vulnerable below that. At the top of the list are these sex offenders. These guys are going to get what's coming to them, no doubt.
And that's the thing. That's what Patrick Bet-David's saying. That's what Adam's saying. And of course, Adam gets it wrong a lot of the time on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. But in this case, there isn't much, the only divide there will be on people is, do they get more years or is it capital punishment? That's the only real debate people are willing to have. Whether or not these people are terrible is just, in my opinion, it's just not up for debate. And, Adam saw that as well. That's why he actually gave a good take, unlike most of his other takes. It's just, it's wild. But again, going back to my point, they might be protected. They might end up being protected in jail. So a lot of the times, this case and otherwise, you think, well, those guys are going to get what's coming. But now we're starting to learn from Joe Rogan's guest that that's not always the case. Sometimes these guys get protected. They get put in a place where you can't even call them what they are, which I'm falling victim to now too. I can't even call them what they are because of where I'm, It's a wild thing to see, man. Wild, absolutely wild. And the last thing, and I've covered this story, and basically, like Epstein, had to sell to people. They say there is, and again, I'm using the term PDF file. They say there's a local ring that they were selling to. A local ring. And somehow, this story isn't accompanied by, and here's the local ring of people who are partaking in this type of stuff. How is that even possible? How is it not, you guys are going to just sit until you tell us how do you not, How is there not a list of names? Again, like with these lists, it's such a, I make videos and it's always, I try to mix humor and everything, but it is a piss off when there's just, where are the lists? Why is every time there's supposed to be a list? There's no list. You'd think with this case, they'd be like, and here's the 9 people that they sold things to. Here's the 9 people that they colluded with and did things with. Nothing. There's a local ring. They know that there's a local ring, and they haven't produced this local ring yet. That's insane. Even just to have one of these guys who's doing 100 years now, William or Zack, whatever their names are, even to just have them say, John Smith. I'm so sorry if your name's John Smith. You know, John Doe. Sorry if your name's John Doe, But even just to say the guy's name out loud, this guy, this guy, this guy, you should just have these guys on TV, just name them out loud. Just whoever you remember. Where did you meet? They should have to say this out loud. This should be a known thing. And the most charitable thing I can do thought-wise is say, well, they're probably on the hunt for this local ring of people. But after seeing the Diddy case, which is still unfolding, of course, and the Epstein case, it's like, is there going to be anything else? Or is this the thing that's supposed to placate us? Is this the thing? The whole divide, because even right now, what everybody's pointing to is, oh, LGBTQ. It's like, I don't care about that. I don't care that they're gay. Who cares if they're gay? It's beyond that. You think there's other gay people that are like, oh no, got some of our guys. There's gay people right now who are looking at this being like, wow, vile people. Can't believe it. Vile people. The same way when I see a black guy who shot 6 people or is a part of a gang and he's selling to his own mother and this and that, I don't think, oh, he got one of us. The man's holding us down. No, I think, oh, that's a deplorable human being. So is that the thing that's going to placate us? The fact that, they caught those LGBT. No. I'm not placated by that. Not at all. Because it has nothing to do with that, really. The same way I'm not going to go and be like, oh, well, white guys. No. This has nothing to do with that. These guys are a class of their own. The same way I always tell people to look at the elite and be like, you see like Jay-Z's a billionaire and this black billionaire and this white billionaire and this Asian billionaire. It's not. They don't think about race. They're in their own class of people. They look down on all of us, no matter what color we are, and they say, ugh, check out that guy. Ugh, those plebs. This is the same thing with these guys. They're in their own class of people. I'm not going to be placated because, someone who seems like they're far left or at least would have the ideology of somebody who is progressive got caught doing something. No. I want to know the ring. That's what I want to know. I want to know who was in the ring. Who were they selling to? Who was okay with this? They did this because there was business to be had. Who are they doing business with? That's what I want to know. And then the question that man, it gets way worse when you have kids. These type of stories, they get way worse. But going back to the question at hand that Patrick was posing, what should happen to guys like this? I think they should have to turn over everybody involved. And then, 100 years, maybe 200, maybe 600. I mean, at the point where you get there, it's like, what are you even saying? You're just saying that they're going to spend the rest of their lives in jail. But they're going to spend the rest of their lives in jail protected, not having to confront what they did. Not being allowed to be around people who can even shame them for what they did. I'll be honest. I won't say, no calls for violence because that's what the platform demands. But nah. Anyways, guys, nothing really funny with this one. I got to be honest. But at least they got locked up. At least they went to jail. It's where they deserve to be. And hopefully those boys now can start healing. All right, man. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm out.